short round. Step on it.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones. Hold on to your potatoes.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Jeff Onan.
Jeff, my good buddy Bob Iger called me up the other day. You know,
Okay.
Bob Iger's my friend, as I've already established in the continuity of the Kongversation.
Because you guys went to college together.
No, he was a war buddy. He saved my life in the war, or I saved his life, I can't remember. But he called me up, and he said, you know, I loved what you did for our live-action Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid remake we did. I love what you did for it. Your episode on merfolk in the Donkey Kong universe really helped cement that film's success. And I was like, I find that hard to believe, Bob, but I'm glad you're happy with it. It was like, well, I need you to do me another favor. And it's like, well, that's 2 in 1 year, Bob. I don't know how I feel about that. And he said, well, this new Indiana Jones movie we did with our Lucasfilm division had a $300 million budget. And I said, well, Bob, I don't think movies should cost that much. That seems like it's getting a little excessive. That's your problem right there. He said, I know, but it's done. And if we ever wanted to make back any profit, we really need to have more promotion. And I was like, well, I don't know what I can do. And he was like, well, you did wonders with the Merfolk episode. And I was like, well, all right. If you say so, Bob, we'll do an episode on Indiana Jones and the DKU. So, welcome back, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I want to stop you right there. I have bad news, but I also have good news.
Okay.
I'm gonna do them in that order.
All right.
Ended on the good note. Bad news. I misunderstood the assignment. Just got like in terms of like the notes and the preparation. I misunderstood. I thought we were covering not Indiana Jones. I watched Osmosis Jones.
Oh no!
Yeah, I was really looking forward to cracking up, and I watched Osmosis Jones. I thought, well, this doesn't seem like very connected to the DKU, but I suppose Bill Murray does just eat a chimpanzee's egg, and that's kind of like Donkey Kong 64 or something. So I took notes, but no, I fucked up. That's the bad news. That's the bad news out of the way. Good news is, since it is actually Indiana Jones, I am at least vaguely aware of Indiana Jones. I didn't do notes. I was doing all like preparation for this research wise on Osmosis Jones, but I at least have a cursory knowledge of Indiana Jones. He is a dog from the Hoosier state. I think. I think I can fumble my way through this one, is what I'm saying. We've got this covered.
I think this is going to be a good episode. Yeah, so this episode, by the way, this isn't going to be us going through the entirety of the Donkey Kong universe, the shared Rare universe, and saying, hey, in this game, there was this explicit reference to Indiana Jones. We're going to have a little bit of that, sure. But
you're allowed to have like a little bit of that.
A little bit of that, but it's going to be more about how Indiana Jones, that original 3-film trilogy. We're not really going to be talking about the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the what is it? The Dial of Destiny?
Yeah, the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, because I don't think either one of us have seen the Dial of Destiny, so there will be no Dial of Destiny spoilers.
I don't think that either of those movies influenced the development of Donkey Kong Country.
No, they didn't, because the first 3 are from the 1980s, which predate Donkey Kong Country, and we're going to talk about how they were instrumental in giving us the DKU that we know and love today. And really quick, I want to give a thanks to Kirko Mods for the upscaled render of Donkey and Diddy Kong that we're using for the key art for this episode on both YouTube and SoundCloud. It's that render that I think was really only shared on Rare's website back in the day, the Rareware website, where it's Diddy Kong with Donkey Kong in the minecart, and there's a crash Kremlin behind them, and Diddy Kong is just grabbing Donkey Kong's face and like rubbing his eyeball with his fingers. And I was like, this is the key art I want to use for this episode on YouTube and SoundCloud, but I can only find a really compressed JPEG from Rareware, and it doesn't exist out in the open internet in any higher res. But Kirko Mods has been doing these upscaled versions of these very, very compressed renders, usually found on the Rareware website. And did one for this. And I was like, hey, would you mind if we used it? And he said, sure. So thanks, Kirko Mods. You can check out Kirko Mods on Patreon at patreon.com/Kirko. They don't just upscale renders. They also do really great fan games of like Banjo-Kazooie. Like here is more Banjo-Kazooie content. I believe the Idaho crew has streamed several of them in the past. So check them out.
Yeah, it's just a good reminder that the renders from the original Donkey Kong Country are nightmares. Their fingers are scary skeleton fingers, and the like the pupils on the eyeballs are like raised up, like separate from the iris, the white parts of the eyeball. It's a lot. There's a lot going on with them, and just the dead-eyed stares. It's scary.
We were a simple folk in 1994, Jeff, and we thought this was just high art.
Yeah, when I was 1 year old, I thought this is the peak of three-dimensional animation, but at the time it was, sadly.
Hey, speaking of Patreon, I really quickly want to say that DK Vine is on Patreon. And, oh boy, if you love great content like this, you'll want to check out our Patreon. Think about, throwing a couple bucks our way, just like Indiana Jones puts the stuff on the pedestal.
It's like a little bag of sand. Put your bag of sand in our pockets.
Yeah, put your bag of sand up on the pedestal to redistribute the weight, and we will give you the golden idol that is great Donkey Kong universe content / Donkey Kong journalism every month. DKVine.com/Patreon. And oh boy, Jeff, oh boy, I said we'd have new shirts for July on our TeePublic shop, and I meant it. We're right now on TeePublic at DKU.com/merchandise. We've got the all-new Congo Canopy shirt, just in time, actually jumping ahead of the 20th anniversary of Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. That's right, we're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of Mario Golf Toadstool Tour.
The only people on the internet where you will get that content.
That's right.
Anniversary.
That's right. And
celebration of Mario Kart Toadstool.
You can get the T-shirt to commemorate it on our merch store. You can also get the DK Vine neon logo, the DK Vine logo done up in the style of our 2004 to 2010 site aesthetic. When we said, we want to just look like a brothel in Amsterdam, and we just went all in on red neon. So
the free smells sign in a Jimmy John's window.
Yeah, except we don't shoot the animals. We embrace them.
Does Jimmy John's shoot animals?
Yeah, look it up. He's
is that the I do know about this. It took me I was a little slow to process. But yeah, that's a good reference.
Well, it's sad because I liked Jimmy John's before I found out that he was a hunter of endangered species and treated his employees like garbage. So
don't shop there. You can make a sandwich at home, dummy.
That's true, and you can do it while wearing our DK Vine neon shirt. You can find it at dkvine.com/merchandise, or just go to TeePublic and search for DK Vine. All right, Jeff. All right. Here's a little historical factoid for you.
Hit me. I love those kinds of factoids.
So we're recording this on July 9th. July 9th, 1981 is when the original Donkey Kong arcade game came out in Japan. This is the 42nd anniversary of Donkey Kong.
Cool. That means something to me.
Well, I mean, it means it's 42 years old. That's all it means. It's 2 years ago we did that big episode for Donkey Kong's 40th anniversary. That meant more, obviously.
Right. I have 5 fingers on my hand, and so when a number ends in a multiple of 5, I'm like, yes, and then when a number ends in like a different number that's not a multiple of 5, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
I start vomiting.
We talked a little about this before we did the episode while we were playing our weekly Sea of Thieves stream, and this came up in the chat. It was like, hey, I'm surprised nobody's mentioned that this is the 42nd anniversary of Donkey Kong. It's like, well, we can't mention every anniversary because at this point there have been well over 100 DKU games between all of the cameo games and mainline series, and you just can't do it. You know, the DKU's been around for almost 30 years now. Donkey Kong's been around for 42 years.
People aren't capable of acknowledging that years are arbitrary. Like, nobody's going around being like, hey, you didn't say anything for the 630th month of Donkey Kong 3. And I'm like, yeah, because nobody celebrates hundreds of months.
Yeah.
But like a year is just 12. It's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. Now, if you want to attribute some meaning to anniversaries, that's fine. But the number 42 is ugly, and the number 45 is kind of hot. So we'll talk to me in 3 years.
Even then, 45, between 40 and 50, it's just like, who cares? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, no, it's the higher you get, the bar gets raised. Like 5-year anniversary, whoa. But 45-year, fuck that. Like now I'm waiting for the 50. And after the 50, I'm waiting for the 60. And after that, basically 75. Like it's like a logarithmic curve.
Right.
Not to be confused with the Lord of Games log. That's different. But numbers are just something we made up so that we could subjugate people with capitalism or something. I'm not sure. But
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're up on that soapbox, even though you don't know why you're up there.
I don't. My whole aesthetic is getting indignant about something I don't understand or care about.
Well, I'm just bringing this up because, well, one, like, no, we're not going to acknowledge the 42nd anniversary of Donkey Kong other than this little exchange here on this podcast, because I hate how there are like, well, we're both Beatles fans, right? And there are Beatles fan social media channels or websites, and their whole thing, they don't generate content. They don't like write think pieces on various albums or songs. They just say, on this day, the album Pipes of Peace came out from Paul McCartney. And it's just, okay, thanks for the reminder that it's Pipes of Peace's anniversary. Doesn't really mean anything right now, but thank you.
In the sphere of Beatles albums and songs and extended, solo artists' careers of the Beatles and then their friends and everything, you can come up with something to say every day of the year. Every single day something happened because you're talking about like 50 years of music history. Like, it doesn't matter when Pipes of Peace came out. I don't care.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, that's what these like fan enterprises turn into inevitably, is just, hey, this is the anniversary of something. Hey, tomorrow's the anniversary of something. And we have to draw the line somewhere. But Jeff, this is actually relevant to the topic we are discussing on this episode of the Kongversation. I don't just bring this up to rant.
Osmosis Jones.
No, stop with the Osmosis Jones. I won't engage with you about Osmosis Jones, where Bill Murray is just being a grossman, like blah, blah, blah. He's like picking his ass and like eating his shit or whatever he does in that movie. I don't need it.
On the one hand, you're right, because this wasn't what it was supposed to be about. On the other hand, if I don't force Osmosis Jones discussion, then I have wasted 3 pages of notes. So you and I are about to just kind of butt heads for the next hour and a half. I'll let it go. Out of deference of respect to you, my elder.
Yeah.
my elder. I will lay off of the Osmosis Jones to talk about the lesser Jones or the other. I mean, I should say equal. Whatever.
On this day in 2023, Jeff Onan laid off the Osmosis Jones tangent.
Yeah, no, and then we're gonna celebrate the 7-month anniversary. Wow, like shut up.
Anyway, Jeff.
Yeah, anyway.
July 9th, 1981 is when Donkey Kong hit arcades and people were first exposed to Donkey Kong. But little known historical fact, because very rarely people draw these comparisons with these two disparate franchises. Less than 1 month before that, Raiders of the Lost Ark premiered on June 12th, 1981. The very first Indiana Jones movie. Less than a month before Donkey Kong.
Less than a month. And most people would say that doesn't matter. But here at DK Vine, we're going to tell you why it does. Because what would eventually come to pass is that the Indiana Jones film franchise would actually be a significant piece of influence on the Donkey Kong video game franchise in the years to come.
Yeah, because, at that inception in the summer of 1981, both properties couldn't be more unlike. Raiders of the Lost Ark, of course, is a throwback to the adventure serials of the 1930s and 1940s. Where you got a sweaty adventure man getting in all sorts of implausible, death-defying, high-stakes situations. And, it's like, that's where the term cliffhanger originated from, those old serials where people would literally be hanging off a cliff, and it's like, how are they going to get out of this jam? Come back next time for the next installment of Sweaty Adventure Man. And, so that's, that's the impetus for Indiana Jones. Whereas Donkey Kong started off as a blatant ripoff of King Kong on reskinned Popeye characters. So, both properties are just shameless ripoffs of things that came decades before them.
Or loving homage.
Loving homages, right, of course.
Is another way to call it.
Right. But Indiana Jones, as that property sort of entered its 1990s dormancy with the, remember the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles?
Not when it happened.
No, nobody did. Nobody watched it. Nobody cared because Indiana Jones was no longer hot. It was no longer in the zeitgeist. After Last Crusade, people stopped caring. And then George Lucas was like, well, here's the Young Indiana Jones adventures, where he meets all sorts of historical figures from the early 20th century. And it's just like, shut up. We don't care. It's done. And so that kind of came and struggled and didn't do so well. And just as that was happening, Donkey Kong was being rethought for the 1990s. Because Donkey Kong had entered a long period of dormancy itself once, Mario kind of stole the thunder and Mario became the breakout star of those first two games, and then Miyamoto was like, well, what if we just focus on this character? And Donkey Kong was kind of cast aside, but then Rare got the chance to make a Donkey Kong game with their new ACM technique for the Super Nintendo that scored them a big lucrative contract with Nintendo. And when they were rethinking Donkey Kong for the 1990s, I think it's quite obvious that they took a fair bit of inspiration from the Indiana Jones films when figuring out how to create Donkey Kong's world in a way that isn't just King Kong again and again and again.
Right. The question of what if Donkey Kong was the star and the playable character?
Yeah.
And we wanted to put him out into a game that gave you the sense of adventure.
Right.
What if we make an adventure game? And I think that Rare at the time, Greg Mails, clearly were inspired by some of the other adventure games of the era, like The Secret of Monkey Island, which itself was inspired by pirate fantasy, and things like the Pirates of the Caribbean amusement park ride, which itself was deeply entrenched in pirate literary tradition from the late 19th century, and things like the Treasure Island and all of this. Everything influences everything. But the point being, Donkey Kong, they said, let's make it an adventure game. And what is the quintessential adventure movie? Raiders of the Lost Ark, or the Indiana Jones trilogy of movies.
Yeah, like you said, some of this is just obvious because they're tropes. And Indiana Jones was just taking old, tired tropes of the adventure genre, dusting them off, and making it new again for audiences of the 1980s. And so some of these tropes are just, floating around in the ether independent of Indiana Jones. And this episode is not an analysis of Indiana Jones. We're not doing that. It's not even like that episode we did on the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, where we're just like, well, we watched all 5 movies before the Sea of Thieves crossover. Here we go. That's not what we're doing here. This is more of a narrow look at how Indiana Jones directly inspired the DKU, but more specifically, the characters of the Kongs and their exploits. Because the modern DKU would not exist, I believe, without the Indiana Jones trilogy. The first 3. We don't care about Crystal Skull.
We're not making a value judgment or a comment on quality about those films, but clearly a film that released in 2006 or whatever
8
is 8. It's less relevant to the conversation because it did not influence the development of Donkey Kong Country. But I would say this about Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark in particular.
Yeah.
In a way, it is just an amalgamation and a send-up and a love letter to tropes that had been established in a genre that was now, at that time, dead. But in so many ways, to the modern, to today's pop culture, Indiana Jones is the origin.
Yeah.
This is kind of a catch-22 or what do you call that thing that's the opposite? A contradiction. Indiana Jones is the origin of the adventure genre because it was just this perfect nexus of sending up all the tropes in this distilled perfect movie with a massive pop culture attachment rate that just... I don't think anyone who's a huge fan of Indiana Jones actually watched fucking 1920s adventure serial.
No.
I haven't.
No.
I haven't seen that shit. But I've seen Indiana Jones, and that's the thing. So in a way, this Indiana Jones, which is just built on all these tropes and celebrating those tropes, homaging them, it then becomes the start of a quote-unquote new genre that is not new at all. It's all steeped in those tropes. But everything that's adventure genre of the last 40 years is built on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, and, it's not surprising that would then be a large influence on the team at Rare, given their ages. A bunch of Gen Xers at that point in their early 20s. The Indiana Jones movies, the entire George Lucas, Steven Spielberg catalog of films would be so formative for them. You mentioned The Goonies, that another movie starring...
I did not, but I would.
Oh, well, you mentioned pirate fiction.
I did mention the concept of pirates.
Yeah.
So in that way, yeah, The Goonies is my favorite film, possibly. It's a top 10.
But Ke Huy Quan, who, of course, plays Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, he's then one of the main characters in The Goonies. And I think that's apropos, given the most obvious connection when discussing Indiana Jones and Donkey Kong, it's the relationship between Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Effectively, it's just Indiana Jones and Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, when I was a child, I've been kind of discussing this week with some people. Because I rewatched those films, and there's people been discussing, is Temple of Doom a good movie, etc. Blah blah blah. But it doesn't. I'm not gonna get into that. But what I'll say is, as a child, in terms of my nostalgia, in terms of my upbringing, in terms of the media I consumed, I personally was so much more attached to Temple of Doom than I was the other Indiana Jones films. And the reason that I think that was the case was that when I was a child and I had access to all these movies, the whole trilogy, all of them came out before I was born because I'm young and beautiful. But Temple of Doom is the only one that has children in it in like a meaningful role. And when you are a child, like you look for that. That's why The Goonies is so impactful to my upbringing, is because of how much you see yourself in you can feel like you're part of the Goonies. Like you can imagine the stakes of like, okay, the kids are going through the story, and obviously you're going to relate to that when you are a kid. And Temple of Doom has kids, but yeah, like Indiana Jones, the character, is a cool guy. He's interesting. He's probably sort of a conservative American fantasy or something. I don't know what he is, but he represents the rugged individualism of the conservative dream, fighting against the Nazi Empire or something. I don't know what Indiana Jones is, but I'll tell you what I liked as a kid. I liked his buddy, Short Round, a hell of a lot more than the guy with the hat and the whip and the what's I like his buddy.
So, right, I like how you couldn't think of a third descriptor for Indiana Jones. There's the hat and the whip.
With the hat and the whip and the whatever. Yeah, that's enough things.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be three. Short Round, I think, to me, and I think you'll probably agree with this, but he basically, in the context of Temple of Doom relative to the trilogy, he grounds Indy. He puts Indy in like a, almost more human, because he's got this character he can bounce off of that's not just his romantic interest, that he's like kind of having sexual tension and like repartee with, but it's like, no, it's like Indy bouncing off of a kid. I think really humanizes Indy in a big way, and that makes you like Indy more, and it makes you love Short Round. It makes you love the dynamic between them. Yeah.
So growing up, like I'm too young, believe it or not, for like at the very least the first two Indiana Jones movies, and the third one would be too scary for me at the age I was when it came out. So I didn't really catch up with them until late in the 90s. I think it was the USA Cable Network did a double feature one weekend of Temple of Doom and Last Crusade. And that was my very first time actually sitting down to watch them. And so Temple of Doom was the first Indiana Jones movie I saw. So this movie that I think so many people of the generation in which it came out say is the worst. I mean, it's certainly the most racist. I will agree with you there.
Oh, it's the worst. Like, let's not, but that's fine.
Well,
sometimes the worst, sometimes the worst can be the best.
Yeah, like, I think I like the structure of Temple of Doom the best. Like, I'm not going to argue it's a better film than Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I think it's...
You would lose the argument. But
I think for me, it's a more fun movie.
I think that the first hour of Temple of Doom is a little bit difficult to sit through in 2023. And I think that the second hour of Temple of Doom is the best set pieces and enjoyment of a movie that you can have in movies.
Yeah.
So it's a tale of two halves for me.
I feel awkward when I say Temple of Doom is my favorite Indiana Jones movie these days because of the racism. But like, okay, if we can excise the whole scene where these people are just slurping down on like live eels and like skittering bugs and chilled monkey brains, like there should have been a line in there where like after the dinner where Indiana Jones said, well, Hindus are devout vegetarians, so clearly there's something up with these weirdos. Like that's not normal. And just basically like tip the hat to the fact that this is a crazy evil cult living under the palace. But yeah, that being said, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was the first one I saw, and I was immediately taken with it because obviously I then saw the influence it had on Donkey Kong Country. Specifically, and I know everybody's going to think of the set piece that we're all thinking of, but specifically it is the relationship between Indiana Jones and Short Round. His little, like, orphan sidekick who just tags along with him on these globetrotting adventures. They briefly, like, talk about his past, like he was, orphaned in some bombing, I think in China, and then, Short Round tried to pick Indiana Jones' pockets, and he was like, tisk, tisk. And he was just like, what's your story, kid? Do you want to tag along? Do you want to be a sidekick?
It's basically the episode of Always Sunny when Dennis bonds with the pickpocket girl at the public pool water park.
Yeah.
But yeah, if so, for our younger audience who can relate to that, that's how you could tell the parallel. But yeah, Indy, in a way, is a father figure for Short Round, but it's different than that. It's that really fun movie dynamic of like two guys that hang out, and one of them is a child and one of them's a man, and it's like, I'm not a responsible father, but also I kind of am your father.
It's a fun dynamic, especially because, yeah, to Short Round, and I guess to the kids watching the movie who could imagine themselves as Short Round, Indiana Jones can be the father figure, he can be the older brother, or just a guy who's gonna buy you booze. But like, there is just this really fun dynamic where, and I think it's what makes Short Round work as a character, is he's precocious, but he's not annoyingly so, right?
No.
Like, you can have these kids who are just so smart and wise beyond their years that they bug the shit out of you. But Short Round, he's still a kid. He's just street smart, and he can hang with Indiana Jones, which earns Indiana Jones respect. And that's just a really fun dynamic to display.
Right. I think that the movie has a parasitic relationship in terms of the audience enjoyment, which is that Short Round sucks all of the good enjoyment out of the dynamics of the characters, while the female lead gets all the enjoyment sucked out of her. Because in a way, a lot of times these movies, you have the little kid being like annoying, and it's like, no, in this movie, we're gonna write the writers. They're gonna write the female character as the worst character of all time. And that is going to suck up all the annoying quota so that Short Round can only shine. Like, I like Temple of Doom, but the writing for the female character, like every 5 seconds being like, I broke a nail. It's rough. It's a little bit rough.
But I think it also works as just like really just making the absurd tropes of that era.
Oh, I'm sure it's like a send-up of 20s stuff that I didn't watch.
Yeah.
But I don't love it.
Well, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom itself is mostly based on a 1939 film called Gunga Din. Loosely based on the Rudyard Kipling poem. So you know it's racist. But yeah, like the whole thuggy cult, everything from there was just lifted wholesale from that film. So I haven't seen it, but you know, maybe there's Like lots of little things people say, like, why did they do that? It's just because it was taken from that movie. But, yeah, like, Short Round and Indiana Jones had such an endearing relationship. And that was my first introduction to Indiana Jones. So then the next night when I watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and I was like all jazzed about Indiana Jones because I was like, this is great. I love this movie. I love this franchise. Why haven't I gotten on board with it before? I can't wait to watch the next one. And then, of course, Short Round isn't in it. He's never referenced. And I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? It was disappointing because Short Round humanized Indiana Jones in such a profound way for me. And then I can't help but think of the Cameron Regal theorem when it comes to Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, where Cameron's theory is that Donkey Kong cannot be portrayed as an asshole or a jerk if he's paired with Diddy Kong, because Diddy Kong immediately makes him this responsible or semi-responsible mentor and someone that Diddy Kong wants to emulate. And, when Short Round isn't around Indiana Jones, it's implied that he has a relationship with the underage daughter of his professor. He has sex with secret Nazi spies. It's essentially Donkey Kong Jungle Beat or Mario versus Donkey Kong. So I'm saying, like, you need Short Round with Indiana Jones, but he's only in the one movie. And that's a shame.
Yeah, I think that part of it is a difference of, like, whether you're approaching this film as from the audience being children or the audience being adult baby boomer men.
Right.
Who, if you were born in the 50s, then maybe you'll have a very different relationship with Short Round and Indy and how you view it. But, for me, born in the 90s, the correct time to be born, I don't know why I said that. It's the correct time to be born to witness the end of civilization, I guess? I don't know. But we have a different perspective. And I love the Short Round Indy dynamic, and that alone is enough to make Temple of Doom my favorite movie.
Yeah.
But that's not the only reason to like that movie, because there's a set piece. There is a sequence. There's a chain of sequences in the latter half of the film when they get down into the catacombs of the cave system and the cult down there.
The Temple of Doom.
Where it's the temple. I guess it is. Yes, the titular Temple of Doom. That everything that happens in that cave is the best thing that happens in movies. It's better than what is your favorite movie. It's better than The Godfather. I don't know what your favorite movie is. And that is, I think, where you find the most obvious direct inspiration for things that you witness then in the Donkey Kong Country video games.
Right. Like I said, obviously, the Donkey Kong Country team lifted things wholesale from the movies of this era. Like, 1 year before Temple of Doom was Return of the Jedi, and what did the treetop villages look like? Oh, like the Ewok village from that film. But this sequence, the minecart sequence in Temple of Doom, was obviously the biggest inspiration for Donkey Kong Country's 2 minecart stages, which would go on to become such a defining set piece for Donkey Kong Country. It's so heavily associated with Donkey Kong now that, it got 3D sequences in Donkey Kong 64. They had to bring back minecarts because everybody loved the minecart levels from Donkey Kong Country. And then Retro, when they took over the series, they brought them back fully, almost to the point of overkill in Returns and Tropical Freeze. And the minecarts were homaged in the background of the Super Mario Brothers movie and will be the centerpiece of the Donkey Kong Country theme park in Super Nintendo World. So that's all from this little sequence in Temple of Doom. Not little sequence, it's a major, major set piece.
Right. And I also want to point out, obviously, this is the bigger sequence with the more longevity of influence on the Donkey Kong series. But also in that part of the film, there's these wooden catwalk caves with hanging, dangling lights that are identical to the catwalks in Donkey Kong Country 1. Clearly an inspiration there as well.
Yeah. And when you look at all of this and like the Donkey and Diddy Kong relationship, where Diddy Kong is just this baseball cap wearing, like street smart kid who maybe is in above his head but doesn't want to admit it, but just looks up to Donkey Kong, idolizes him, wants to be just like him. It's just clearly like Temple of Doom was what they looked at when developing the world of Donkey Kong Country, and they're like, how do we make Donkey Kong, obviously not the same Donkey Kong, but at the time they started developing it, that wasn't the intention. And, how do we make Donkey Kong this endearing figure, this adventuring gorilla? And they rethought the character of Donkey Kong Jr. to be more like Short Round, which Nintendo didn't like, so they made him the new character of Diddy Kong, which necessitated the aging up of the characters. But I think it's brilliant. Like, Diddy Kong is my favorite character in, all of video games, but the Donkey Kong series, of course, in particular. And Short Round is my favorite Indiana Jones character because, well, for one, Ke Huy Quan is just a fantastic actor. Even back then, this was his first role, right? And he just nailed it. Like, he was just so perfect for it. And, now he's an Oscar winner. Now he's a big shot in Hollywood. But it was just such a wonderful combination of elements coming together to create this character, which then gave us this little monkey in the 90s that I would also love very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just, obviously, some of the specifics from Temple of Doom that we've talked about, but just the general vibes of the Indiana Jones films generally influenced Donkey Kong Country in the way that I think every adventure film of the past 40 years was influenced by them. But I think one of the elements of that I love is this feeling of an individual or a small team up against an army.
Yeah.
The feeling of, I think that Indiana Jones, for some audiences or for people, what they want to get out of it, can represent the individual against the tide of totalitarianism, and that is inspiring to feel like, oh, look at this guy who is basically just an academic or a kind of an everyman, but what he can do against an authoritarian regime that is faceless and infinite in number. Anyways, also, Judeo-Christian God is real.
But so are the Hindu gods, apparently.
There's a lot, yeah. What Indiana? I think he has a line, I think, in Crystal Skull, actually, about says something about gods, and he says, "Well, it depends on which god is your god." And I'm like, are all the gods real? Like, what? I don't know what's real. Also, aliens. But yeah, then after that, we could talk a little on The Last Crusade, which I think has some also dynamics to dissect.
For sure, yeah. So, like, obviously, Temple of Doom is where I think the most inspiration was drawn from when it comes to Donkey Kong Country. And then, ironically, Donkey Kong Country 2 had a little bit of the Goonies in it, and it was Diddy Kong's game. Just as the Goonies was Ke Huy Quan's. I mean, it wasn't his movie, it was an ensemble piece, but, that it was still kind of cool to see the Goonies. It's
starring the kids.
Right,
it's not.
Right.
The kids aren't the sidekicks.
Right, exactly. It's the kids taking charge and saying, this is our adventure. And that was very much Donkey Kong Country 2. So even though that's not Indiana Jones, it's still cool to have that link between Spielberg and Ke Huy Quan and Diddy Kong. And it's just neat. But yeah, Last Crusade, the third Indiana Jones movie from 1989. Not as many things here. This is the hunt for the holy grail, because this was basically just them saying, wow, Temple of Doom kind of went overboard. We went too far. What if we just make Raiders of the Lost Ark again? But we switch up the MacGuffin, and it wasn't just a 1-for-1 remake. It wasn't like Ghostbusters to Ghostbusters 2 or Home Alone 2. Like, it was different, but they definitely tried to recapture the vibe of Raiders of the Lost Ark, including bringing back Nazis as the antagonist. And what's interesting about Last Crusade and the DKU is that, Short Round wasn't in Last Crusade, but they introduced Indiana Jones' father, Henry Jones Sr., Indiana Jones being Henry Jones Jr. in actuality. And this relationship, you can't help but draw comparisons to Donkey Kong and Cranky Kong, which, I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but one of the original ideas that they bandied about for Donkey Kong Country 2 was that, but before they stumbled upon it being Diddy Kong's game, they did come up with the idea of what if Donkey Kong and Cranky Kong have to team up and go on an adventure together.
I'd play that. I like Cranky Kong.
Well, I mean, we kind of did eventually with Tropical Freeze, but that is The Last Crusade. It's this adventure where Indiana Jones is kind of displaced in his own tale, where his father, his overbearing father, who probably went on many the adventure in his own youth, he's forced to team up with him, and they bicker and they squabble along the way.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic. I think that what's interesting to me is that I absolutely think Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best of the three. And it's not really close, like in an objective kind of movie sense or whatever. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
But it's the one of the three that I think the love interest of Marion in that film really holds her own as a character in the movie that you want to see bounce off of Indy. And I think that in the ensuing sequels, they each have kind of a love interest type character, but they pawn off that idea of the sidekick that Indy can bounce off of to a different character than the love interest. So in the second movie, it's all about Indy and Short Round, and the love interest is basically a punchline, which I don't love, but I love Short Round, so I'm conflicted. Then the third movie, the dynamic at the heart is Indy and his dad, and the love interest is like sidelined pretty quick because you find out she's a Nazi, and Indiana Jones doesn't like that.
Doesn't like Nazis, and that's what I really...
He doesn't like Nazis.
One of the things I do like about Indiana Jones is he hates Nazis.
He does. It's relatable because they're bad, objectively.
Yeah.
I think that... Now, do I like Henry Jones Sr. as the sidekick? In Last Crusade, yes. But I don't like him more than Short Round, and I don't like him more than Marion in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I think it's all right. I think the movie's kind of painfully dull. I don't care about being like, hey, it's an Indiana Jones movie. Let's show more of Europe. Let's go to Italy and let's go to Berlin and have Indiana Jones get his book signed by Hitler. I'm like, you know what's boring to me? Europe.
Oh, Europe's not boring.
Yeah, sorry to Europe. You're boring to me.
I felt that way when I was a kid before I appreciated the nuances of Europe. But okay, here's the thing. I will agree that Temple of Doom has the more exciting set pieces.
The trade-off is that the more exotic, you want something exotic, but then when you do that, they're gonna make it racist. So
Right.
That's the trade-off.
Temple of Doom is basically a tropical or subtropical haunted house, right?
Yeah.
It's basically, what if we take like a haunted house and make an adventure out of it rather than a horror movie, which I really dig. Like that just taps into my sensibilities so hard, and so few things do that. Last Crusade is more, let's just trot around Europe for a bit and see Venice, and it's not as interesting to a kid. It's really
right.
not. But I don't know. I like the dynamic between Indiana Jones and Henry Jones Sr., and I like that, that might... I don't think that directly influenced Donkey Kong and Cranky Kong, but I do think it would have if they had gone that direction for DKC 2, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons they looked towards that as a possibility with DKC 2 before they just said, let's just do the Goonies instead. But I can see with Tropical Freeze a little bit of that dynamic between them, even though there's not really any great dialogue in Tropical Freeze like there is the Rare game, so you don't get that bickering. It's still kind of a neat parallel to make with Indiana Jones and Short Round. But we're talking about set pieces, Jeff. I think like Rare lifted the minecart sequences from Donkey Kong Country wholesale, or for Donkey Kong Country wholesale from Temple of Doom. They did the same with a major set piece, one of the more memorable ones from Last Crusade, for not Donkey Kong Country, but Star Fox Adventures.
Yes, you have to choose the cup wisely.
Well, no. I don't remember any cups in Star Fox Adventures.
You have to fly the biplane off the bottom of the blimp.
No, but you're getting closer. Or actually, you're getting further away. Never mind.
Is it like a train car from a carnival? I don't remember.
No, it's the leap of faith.
Yeah. Of course, that was going to be my fifth guess.
So in Last Crusade, there's this big sequence where Indiana Jones has to reach the Holy Grail, and the last test to get to the Holy Grail is a leap of faith across this massive chasm, right? Like this giant cave. There's just this huge pitfall. And how do I cross that? Nobody can make this jump. And then Indiana Jones is like, it's a leap of faith. And it turns out that it's just an optical illusion. There's actually a little stone bridge, yeah, that you can't see with your eye, but if you trust in God or whatever, you could walk right over it. And Star Fox Adventures reuses that, but with magic instead. It's just there's this bit in Dark Ice Mines, right, where Fox McCloud has to get to the other side of a chasm, not to get the Holy Grail or anything even that important to the plot of the game. It's a dinosaur horn that he can use to ride a snow horn. He just blows in it, and the snow horn's like, "Oh, you're friendly," and it's like, "All right." And Fox needs this, but it's just anyway. Rather than an invisible bridge like in the movie, this is just magic. It's like purple space magic, and Fox just jumps, and he's like, "Oh, I can walk across this," but he doesn't have to believe in God or anything. He just does.
Yeah,
it's not as good as the movie, I have to say.
Fox has been to space. It's hard to believe in God when you've been to space. Yeah,
and then God does show up at the end of the game, but he's just your enemy, Andros.
Yeah, anyone can pretend to be God. That's the tricky part. Yeah, this brings up the interesting point, really, that Donkey Kong Country isn't the only Rare game. I almost forgot. And lots of Rare games have been influenced by Indiana Jones in small ways. We're not going to get into all the examples, but this is pretty explicit that you're literally jumping into onto an invisible bridge on a chasm. So
in the movie, it's called A Leap of Faith. In the game, it's called The Leap of Great Faith. And I think maybe the Star Fox Adventures team was hoping that would make it even more impactful. It didn't. No, but they tried, and I still like the thing from the game. Like when I played it, I was like, oh, it's like from the movie, and
yeah, that's fun. We want that. Yeah. What other examples are there? Are there more examples? Or is this it?
Like
I could go
like more references from.
Are there more?
Well, there is that bit in Last Crusade. I think it's from Last Crusade. Maybe it's from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones says, "Nazis, I hate these guys." Remember that?
That's really good world building, because it immediately introduces the audience to the concept of Nazis in case you never heard of them, and then contextualizes whether you should like or dislike them. I relate to Indy, and if he dislikes them, then I, as the audience, know Nazis are bad.
Indiana Jones is a learned individual. He's worldly. He knows things about cultures, and
he gets all the co-eds like turned on. They write words on their eyelids for him and stuff.
That's right. And then he like climbs out the window of his office because everybody wants to fuck him, and he's like, I gotta get out of here.
Life is hard. But yeah, so he did say that. He said, Nazis, I hate these guys. And then that was referenced in Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Right, which, again, I don't think it's nearly as impactful on Conker's Bad Fur Day because Indiana Jones has a lot of reasons to hate the Nazis, given that he's living in the 1930s and Nazism, fascism is on the rise, and being a educated worldly man, he clearly sees why Nazis are a bad thing. Whereas Conker earlier that day or the night before was like, I guess there's a war going on. I don't really give a shit. It doesn't affect me. And then by the end of his Bad Fur Day, he's like, Teddies, I hate these guys. And I'm like, really? You do? Because you didn't give a damn 24 hours ago.
Yeah, he doesn't hate them in like a grand philosophical principled sense. He kind of just hates them because he ran into them a couple times and they were annoying, which feels less impactful.
It really does. It feels like Conker really isn't making a stand. He's just kind of a victim of circumstance, and he's reacting to it.
It could be some bikers in a bar that roughs you up, and you see them again, you're like, oh, I hate these guys. It's like, it doesn't mean that you have a larger thing to say about fascism or whatever. Like, no, he's just a squirrel who pees.
It's almost like they were just trying to load Conker's Bad Fur Day full of references. I don't know.
Yeah, that's one thing they do in that. But hey, I get the reference and I like it because it's from a movie I like. So I click like and subscribe for more.
And like I said, we're not going to go down the list of every Indiana Jones reference in the DKU because we would be here probably for far longer than we want to be, because how many times has there been a giant fucking boulder in the DKU chasing the heroes?
Yeah, 3?
At least, maybe 4. I remember in Mario Party, in Donkey Kong, DK's Jungle Adventure, that board, when you step on the question mark space, and then, oh no, here comes a giant boulder. Indiana Jones.
Yeah. And then you could really say that the kind of set piece, death-defying, oh, the thing is chasing us and we got to get through the thing before the thing hits the thing. The whole action set piece formula from the Indiana Jones movies is basically the crux of every Retro Studios Donkey Kong Country level. They're all like set piece based, high action, Indiana Jones formula type set pieces.
Yeah, like I mentioned before how Indiana Jones was inspired by the serials of the 1930s and 40s and the whole concept of the cliffhanger, right? And Retro really took that to the umpteenth degree in their games. Like nearly every stage, especially as the two games progress and you get, further and further into the adventure, each level just ends in this bombastic sequence, like right out of Raiders of the Lost Ark or Temple of Doom, where Donkey Kong or the other Kongs are just escaping some out-of-control mechanism or some death-defying trap that is just absurd and over-the-top and would never happen in reality, but because it is an homage, you just accept it. You're like, well, maybe this stuff could be out there. I don't know. I'm not exploring ancient temples. I don't know.
Right. Every single level is just like, we're not sinking, we're crashing. But there's also one of the things is every Indiana Jones movie has a bit where the whole floor is covered in a Nicky creature. Because whether it's snakes or bugs or scorpions or rats, every single movie has one of those, and they do this in Donkey Kong Country Returns with the spiders.
Yeah, the Muncher
Madness.
Muncher,
was it? Was it Muncher Marathon or Muncher Madness? I don't remember. Some alliterative title for a level about spiders.
It just makes me think of cunnilingus.
It does. It makes me want to munch. No offense.
And then you think about spiders, and then that just takes a stake to your libido.
Yeah, it's conflicting. I'm up and down with it, but and then we're not even going to get into this, but I will say that without a doubt, the video game Sea of Thieves, which is DKU, is highly inspired by all the adventure tropes, some specific, some general, of the Indiana Jones franchise. I think you could basically say that of the 3 regions in Sea of Thieves, one of them is basically modeled after the Pirates of the Caribbean. One of them is modeled like it's Crocodile Isle from Donkey Kong Country 2. And then one of the 3 regions is modeled like it's a Indiana Jones Raider of the Lost Ark Temple Jungle.
Right.
You know, from the opening sequence with the temple with the idol and the rolling rock. That's Sea of Thieves. It's an Indiana Jones movie as a video game.
Yeah, and you know, you even looking like deeper into the DKU, like Saberwolf for the Game Boy Advance, like that is like it's almost a different type of trope. It's like Rudyard Kipling, you know, British colonialism / imperialism, but still that treasure hunting motif and aspect that Indiana Jones popularized or repopularized in the 1980s. And of course, like you've got to sort of tone it down for modern sensibilities because, well, Indiana Jones, you know, should you really be like robbing from these cultures and like putting them in a museum that isn't associated with them? It's like, well, Indiana Jones, he wants to put it in a local museum, presumably, and everybody associates the line, you know, fortune and glory with Indiana Jones because he says that in Temple of Doom, right? Yeah, it was Temple of Doom.
Yes, it was.
But that was actually his character arc in Temple of Doom, which was a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark by a year, where like, yeah, he's like, oh, fortune and glory, but then he was like, actually, these stones will benefit this community, and I don't need to worry about my own fortune and glory if it benefits this this village, this poor, impoverished village. So
yeah, I'm not going to defend him too much, like because really you can analyze those movies for pretty strong pro-colonizer messages, but if you can set them aside to be part of the era and then just pick out the good elements of those movies, they're pretty good.
Yeah, and they do the same thing with Saberman a little bit in Saberwolf GBA, where like the mayor of Black Witch Village is like, you know, feel free to keep any of the treasure you want. We're okay with it. I don't know. It's kind of a half-assed way to justify it, but at least, you know, they were forward-thinking a little bit with a character who shouts for the Empire whenever he does something cool.
Yeah. Well, the good thing with Donkey Kong, the gorilla, is that he is a native to Donkey Kong Island.
That's right.
And he's while Indiana Jones is up against the Nazis, and that inherently makes him the good guy, Donkey Kong is up against the Nazis of Donkey Kong Island, and also he's native, and he's not a white knight protecting some other place. He's just his place.
Right, and usually the treasure he's trying to obtain is just his stuff that was taken from him in the first place.
Yeah, they didn't stop taking his stuff. That's rude to do. and I basically support Donkey Kong's side of that debate. I think he should be able to have his stuff back. So, good games.
That's a strong hot take right there, Jeff.
I think that the Kremlings are basically wrong. That's my take for the day.
We have a call to take, and I think we should play it.
All right.
Assess what they have to say.
Call. Let's hear it. Let's take the call now.
Hello, DK Vine. This is Jer Rarebear, and I'm happy to call you to talk about Indiana Jones. Now, this is really exciting for me because Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is my favorite movie of all time, and I've always seen the parallels between Donkey Kong Country and the Indiana Jones franchise, like, and not even just in terms of the set pieces, but in terms of characters. I mean, I know you guys will talk about this, but like how DK is like Indy, Short Round is like Diddy, Cranky Kong is very obviously very similar to Henry Jones Sr., and I even love the scene in The Last Crusade when Indiana Jones berates his father for calling him Junior after shooting a bunch of Nazis in frustration. So just really cool parallels. And I would hope that if there's a Donkey Kong Country movie in development, that the writers will take inspiration from the Indiana Jones movies, much like how Greg Mayles took inspiration from Temple of Doom for the minecart segments of Donkey Kong Country. So, yeah, really excited to hear you guys talk about this, and take care. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you for the call, Jared. Where Bear? What? I'm terrible with names.
Jer Bear Lerger. Thank you for the call. I think if the court stenographer will read back my statements, they'll find that I did not perjure myself. Thank you for the call. I'm not sure if there was a question in there. I'm glad you like the movies. I like them too. Last Crusade's not my favorite, but it's one of them.
Well, I think it was, if there is a Donkey Kong Country movie, as there is.
Oh yeah, they hope it would be inspired by Indy.
Yeah, like how do you think it could be inspired by Indiana Jones? Like, do you think they could, like, okay, because one of the big criticisms of the Super Mario Brothers movie was that the screenplay was a bit of a mess, and they tried to get way too much in with not enough time, right? Do you think if they just, no pun intended, ape an Indiana Jones type structure, they can make for a better movie with Donkey Kong?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Indiana Jones inspiration, I think that's the easiest part of the movie to nail. I think it's pretty obvious that if they make a Donkey Kong Country animated movie, it will have action-adventure tropes and set pieces and temple rating and puzzle, we gotta decode the message so we can figure out how to enter the temple, whatever, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That is the easy part, I think. I mean, any writer can figure out that. It's going to be a question of how that's intertwined to the actual plot conflict of the movie, the characters. What's going to be at the heart of the story? Is it a story of Donkey Kong proving himself to Cranky, his father? Is it a story of somebody's kidnapped and needs to be saved? And is it a story of the kingdom's invaded and the only way to stop them is find the MacGuffin? Like, I think that there's a lot of ways they can frame it, and that's going to determine really kind of the things. But I think you're going to see the thing. You're going to see the usual things. You're going to see thrilling minecart sequences and death-defying stunts. You're going to probably see swinging on vines and rope bridges that collapse and people falling into the rivers with the crocodile-infested whatever stuff. Stuff of that nature, trope-wise, I think is a no-brainer to put in a movie. It's just a question of the character stories. What are those going to be?
Who cares? It's a kid's movie.
I didn't care about in the Mario one. People are like, "Oh, the plot's kind of simple." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's still pretty good, though, right?" I don't care. Bowser plays piano.
Here's what I want in the Donkey Kong Country movie. I want a scene where they're in this big like dark, dingy chamber, and they're walking along, and like there's this crackling noise on the floor, and Diddy Kong says, "It sounds like fortune cookies," and Donkey Kong says, "It's not fortune cookies.
They're not fortune cookies, kid."
Which, what the fuck, Steven Spielberg? What the fuck, George Lucas? Fortune cookies aren't even natively Chinese. It's an American invention.
No, we weren't kidding when we said the movie's racist. It's racist from 12 angles to Sunday. It comes from every direction with that. Even at the end when it's just like, the Imperial British Army shows up to save him, and I'm just like, oh god. Here we go.
And Willie's like, it's about time. It's about time the white saviors get here.
Right, in colonized India. Like, rough. But hey, you know, I think we're gonna get all kinds of the typical tropes in the movie. We'll get. I think that probably Donkey Kong will go windsurfing down the Great Pyramid at Giza using the Shroud of Turin, as his parachute. Or whatever Indiana Jones would do, wearing his bucket hat or whatever he does with his lasso.
Bucket, that's a fedora. How do you, like, Indiana Jones doesn't
What?
have a bucket.
I saw the movies. He has a bucket hat. He's got this lasso. It's whatever.
I'm sure there will be bucket hats in the movie, considering the Ring of Kong in the background characters in the Super Mario Brothers.
The Ring of Kong. I like that. That's what it's good. It makes it sound very serious. Well, final thoughts, Hyle, because it's getting close to it's 4:20, so I need to, I don't know, smoke marijuana.
Yeah, no, obviously that's what you do, and I know you
probably.
You are really dedicated to your marijuana consumption at that specific time of day.
I'm a teen boy. I can smoke. Final thoughts. Indiana Jones, 5 words or less or more.
No, well, okay. It really gives me a lot of wiggle room. Thank you.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, even though I said we weren't going to discuss the 21st century Indiana Jones films, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the other one that is the whole reason we're doing this episode, and I can't even remember its goddamn name. I want to see it. I do want to see it. I'm not just being a dismissive, cynical asshole. I want to see it. I just don't care enough to go to the theater right now.
Do you think Harrison Ford will call somebody kid?
Yeah. He definitely will. He definitely will. The thing I like the story I like about Harrison Ford is that apparently on this movie, Dial of the Crystal Skull, whatever, and then the new Captain America movie he's filming right now, like he started to incorporate this new catchphrase in his real life, where he'll just say, "Let's shoot this piece of shit." I just love that. I just love that he just gives so little damns at this point.
Yeah, when you're 80, was he 81? 80?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
He's 81 years old, and they're like, hey, we'll give you $30 million to do another one. He's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, let's shoot this piece of shit. Cost $300 million to make this new Indiana Jones movie.
I saw reports that the rumored 300 price is wrong, and that it actually costs over 330, and then after marketing is close to 450 after marketing.
That's insane.
And so to upwards of close to $500 million for a movie about an 80-year-old man with a lasso and a bucket hat. Like, come on, guys. He doesn't even drive a spaceship. All right, get over yourselves.
Like, in comparison, Ke Huy Quan's everything everywhere all at once, like made for a fraction, a pittance of a budget, and it was fantastic, and it won all the Oscars. And I'm just like, you don't need to spend all this money to make movies, Hollywood. It's ridiculous.
Oh, there's a lot of CGI budget for the swinging monkeys and the groundhogs or whatever.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has impacted the DKU, because it's done it in some surprising ways, Jeff. So in Clive and Wrench, as we learned earlier this season, the time-traveling fridge that the titular duo hop around time and space in, inspired by both the TARDIS from off of Doctor Who and that time Indiana Jones got nuked inside of a refrigerator.
I love that part.
Yeah. People make fun of it. I'm like, well, how would you survive a nuclear explosion? I don't know. I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. Nobody's given me money to do a podcast about Oppenheimer.
I just think that if you're going to set your movie in the 1950s, you should probably have a scene where you're in a 50s diner and then some greasers get in a fight with jocks. Then you get chased by the KGB and just coincidentally stumble onto a nuclear test range because it's the 1950s.
Yeah,
because it's the 1950s.
Like, you forgot to mention that you get chased by the jocks through an anti-communism rally.
Right. Yeah, the Reds and all that stuff. Yeah. It's a fun coincidence that everything I know about the 1950s was happening at all places at all times.
Everything everywhere all at once.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.